Well, remember how I was like, wow, it's so weird. They're talking about all this huge tunnel system that's underneath Al Shifa. They know it's there, and then it turned out like they thought it was there because like they helped build Al Shifa's basement complex as an administrative center, and they were just kind of assuming that Hamas was operating out of it. Uh, well, turns out journalists did some journalism. I know, crazy stuff, crazy stuff. And the Washington Post has put out a new report, which is pretty damning for the Israeli military. Because again, for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, the IDF was claiming, "Oh, Al Shifa is the main hub of Hamas. Al Shifa is the main command center of Hamas. This is where they are controlling the entire battlefield from." And I guess they just never thought that American journalists would bother to check. Which, to be fair to them, usually they don't. But the Washington Post put out this pretty damning report, The Case of Al Shifa, investigating the assault on Gaza's largest hospital, by Louisa Loveluck, Evan Hill, Jonathan Barron, Jarrett Lay, and Ellen Nakashima. And I don't know, pretty crazy. So basically what they did in this piece is they went through all of the photographs that the IDF had put out, all of the footage that the IDF had put out, all of the evidence that the IDF was trying to use to claim that Al Shifa Hospital was the command center for Hamas. They're like, "Oh, look, this is a post-analysis of open source visuals and satellite imagery sheds light on the Israel Defense Forces claims about Hamas's use of Al-Shifa in Gaza City." So again, like an example of one of the pictures they used. We're just going to go through this because it's damning. Weeks before Israel sent troops into Al-Shifa Hospital, its spokesman began building a public case. The claims were remarkably specific, that 5 hospital buildings were directly involved in Hamas activities, that the buildings sat atop underground tunnels that were used by militants to direct rocket attacks and command fighters, that the tunnels could be accessed from inside hospital wards. The assertions were backed by concrete evidence, Israel Defense Forces spokesman Daniel Hagari said as he laid out the case in an October 27th briefing. And just to reiterate, right? They kept saying that they had video evidence of Hamas bringing like rocket launchers into Al Shifa, and like they kept saying it. They kept showing like weird grainy pictures. Very interesting. But did they see that Gmod map? Goddamn. After storming the complex on November 15th, the IDF released a series of photographs and videos that it said proved its central point. Quote, "Terrorists came here to command their operations," Hagari said in a video published November 22nd, guiding viewers through an underground tunnel illuminating dark and empty rooms beneath Al Shifa. We watched that video on stream, by the way. Remember, it was the scary video where they're like, "Ah, yes, this is where Hamas would operate from," and like the camera like pans into like a tiny bathroom. But the evidence presented by the Israeli government falls short of showing that Hamas has been using the hospital as a command and control center. According to a Washington Post analysis of open source visuals, satellite imagery, and all of the publicly released IDF materials. That raises critical questions, legal and humanitarian experts say, I mean, to say the least, about whether the civilian harm caused by Israel's military operations against the hospital, encircling, besieging, and ultimately raiding the facility and the tunnel beneath it, were proportionate to the assessed threat. Which I'm just going to stop here and be like, it also raises some deep concerns about the veracity of the IDF's public-facing statements. You mean that people would just do that? Go in front of press cameras and lie that in order to cover up military crimes? That's crazy, bro. So here's what the Washington Post analysis found. The rooms connected to the tunnel network discovered by the IDF troops showed no immediate evidence of military use by Hamas. None of the 5 buildings identified by Hagari appeared to be connected to the tunnel network. There is no evidence that the tunnels could be accessed from inside hospital wards. So, again, the entire premise of Israel's propaganda around Al-Shifa Hospital was that not only was there an underground complex beneath Al-Shifa, that complex was then connected to this massive tunnel network that goes across all of the Gaza Strip. And that, not only that, they were constantly using it as a main hub. So none of that appears to be true. None of it appears to be true. Remember the video evidence of like, oh, we found all of these guns and boots inside the MRI room. Remember that? Nope. Yeah, of course not. They would have showed it. They only showed some AKs and bandages in old MRI and CT scan rooms, right? I mean, like, this is not... I need to be clear. This is not news to anyone who's been paying attention to this, or anyone who's, like, known about this conflict for a while. This isn't... This isn't a stunning revelation to most, I think, people on the left. However, this is a pretty stunning revelation to liberals in America. That the IDF would lie. That the most moral military in the Middle East would just do that. Go in front of cameras and lie. The most progressive, left-leaning nation in the Middle East would just cover up war crimes in order to justify genocide against Palestinians. That is in fact news, I think, to libs. You know, the folks who aren't who haven't gone full Fetterman yet, you know? Hours before IDF troops entered the complex, the Biden administration declassified U.S. intelligence assessments that it said bolstered Israel's claims. In the aftermath of the raid, Israeli and U.S. officials have stood firm behind their initial statements. Oh, you mean the United States would do that? Lie? That's crazy, dog. We are absolutely confident in the intelligence that Hamas was using it as a command and control node. A senior... Notice, by the way, the change of rhetoric even in this, immediately following the raid. We're confident that Hamas was using it as a command and control node. It was a command and control center, but now it's just a node. It's just a outward branch. You know, like the subtle changes in language when we talk about stuff like this, I know I've been mentioning this in streams, is deeply, deeply important. A senior administration official told the Post last week, speaking on condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive findings. Hamas had been holding the hostages in the hospital compound until shortly before Israel went in. The U.S. government has not made any of the declassified material public, and the official... By the way, we saw those tunnels after Israel went in. They're fucking clean, dog. They were... If Hamas was right there, like, they had some good cleaners come in after them. Yeah, they have weapons of mass destruction. Source, they had a metal pipe from, like, a unused water main. They had a Gordon Freeman pipe wrench. The US government has not made any of the declassified material public, and the officials would not share the intelligence this assessment was based on. Oh, that's so interesting. It's declassified, but it's not public. And the officials aren't even going to share it, despite the declassification. Wild stuff. Wild stuff. Hey, Piggy's Wiggles. The IDF has published extensive, irrefutable evidence that points to the abuse of this Shifa hospital complex by Hamas for terrorism purposes and underground terrorism activity, an IDF spokesperson told the Post. When asked if more evidence from Al Shifa would be forthcoming, the spokesperson said, "We cannot provide additional information." So, like, again, they had control of the Al Shifa hospital. They put out a bunch of, like, a media blitz of propaganda that has since been unsubstantiated. And when asked when more evidence would come out, they just said, "Evidence? What evidence? What? No comment." You know? Oh, and conveniently, on November 24th, Israel's military announced in a statement it had destroyed the tunnel on the hospital grounds, and its forces withdrew soon after. Yeah, just trust me, bro. There were totally tunnels there. There were totally tunnels there, bro. Just trust me. Sure, I've been baby. Please. I know I've cheated on you, but trust me, this one last time. This is interesting. The Post can get some crazy quotes, man. Before I was convinced that Al Shifa was where the operations were taking place, a senior U.S. member of Congress told the Post, speaking on the condition of anonymity because of the sensitivity of the matter. But now, he said, quote, "I think there has to be a new level of demonstration. They should have more proof at this point," unquote. Literally, members of Congress are now being like, "Oops. I guess we're pulling another Iraq. We're pulling another weapons of mass destruction. It seems like we said that there was a thing there to justify violence against civilians getting medical treatment. And it turns out that intelligence was not correct." 2014 never ends, right? God, and this part is very grim, right? This part is grim. Before troops entered the complex, doctors dug a mass grave for as many as 180 people, the United Nations said, citing hospital staff. The morgue had long since ceased to function, because of course it did. They didn't have electricity to keep anything in the hospital on. They can't keep the bodies frozen. So they had to build a mass grave. Several days later, when WHO medics arrived to evacuate those still inside, they said the place of healing had become a, quote, death zone. At least 40 patients, including 4 premature babies, died in the days leading up to the raid and its aftermath, the United Nations said. In the weeks since, God. In the weeks since, other hospitals in Gaza have come under attack in ways that mirror what happened at Al Shifa, making the assault not just a watershed moment in the conflict, but a vital case study in Israel's adherence to the laws of war. Because keep in mind, it is not in accordance with the rules of war to attack hospitals. You don't bomb hospitals. You don't bomb ambulances. And Israel has, oddly enough, been directly targeting ambulances, been directly targeting care workers, been directly targeting hospitals. And every time they do, their public-facing statements are, oh, well, it was a Hamas command center. Oh, well, members of Hamas were in the ambulance. Oh, well, you know, that care worker was secretly a member of Hamas. With no substantiation whatsoever. Did Israel ever sign those? That's a good question. Did Israel sign on to oh, yeah, no, Israel ratified the Geneva Conventions in 1951. So, yeah. They did. They're just doing war crimes. There's just not really an enforcement mechanism for the Geneva Conventions, really, other than international condemnation, which the United States shields Israel from feeling any effects from, so that doesn't really matter. The Al-Shifa Medical Complex was Gaza's most advanced and best equipped hospital. After Israel launched its withering campaign of airstrikes in retaliation for the brutal Hamas attack on October 7th, Al-Shifa became the beating heart of the enclave's faltering health system, as well as a place of refuge for tens of thousands of displaced Gazans who feared that they would be killed in their homes. Medical facilities are afforded special protection, even in times of war, losing their status only, quote, while they're being used outside their medical function to commit acts harmful to the enemy, unquote. Said Adil Haq, a law professor at Rutgers University. Yeah. Without a complete understanding of Israeli intelligence and its battle plans, the legality of Israel's military operations against Al-Shifa remains an open question. Which I'm guessing, just spitballing here, but I'm guessing that the lack of complete knowledge of Israel's current plans and intelligence is probably going to continue for the foreseeable future. They're going to claim they have the intelligence, they're not going to release it publicly, and they're going to carry on. You know? Wait, did they... Oh, it signed and then withdrew from the International Criminal... Interesting. When did they sign and then withdraw from the ICJ, person Merson? Excuse me. Oh god, someone posted the yeah. This one? No, that wasn't the correct one. Yeah, by the way, this the Washington Post goes on to talk about how like the literally some of you mentioned the Red Barrel Room, like the animated video of like what the Hamas tunnel complex would be like. The Washington Post goes on to be like, well, this is what they said they thought was down there. No clue, I just looked at a map. Okay. Yeah, and by the way, like, whether or not something was in violation of international law is determined by such bullshit criteria, right? Quote, The law is about what was in the mind of the attacker at the time the attacker planned and executed the mission, with respect to both the collateral damage they expected to cause and the military advantage they anticipated gaining, said Michael Schmidt, an emeritus professor at the U.S. Naval War College. Like, proving intent is already such a high bar, but proving, like, the intent to commit, like, a massacre at a hospital, like, you're never gonna get that intelligence unless, like, you personally, like, attack and defeat the Israeli military and then unearth all of its, like, private files, you know? Like, we're never going to be able to do that. Oddly enough, when reached out for comment, the IDF would not comment on the military advantage sought or achieved. So strange. So strange that the IDF wouldn't comment on that. What was the urgency? Quote, what was the urgency? This is not yet being demonstrated, unquote, said Yusuf Saeed Khan, a senior lawyer with the Global Rights Compliance, a law firm who has drafted UN reports on siege warfare. Let's see here. By early November, thousands of terrified civilians were trapped inside the hospital grounds as Israel's military operation effectively sealed off the compound from the outside world. At least 2 premature babies died on November 11th when the hospital ran out of electricity to power its incubators, the staff said. Oh, those poor little babies. Several dozen more patients died in the ICU over the following days, medics reported. The Palestine Red Crescent said it could no longer send ambulances to assist or evacuate the wounded. In the early hours of November 15th, yeah, so by the way, as, like, even before the raid, they're being cut off, and people are just dying like crazy because they have no supplies. You know, they're doing surgeries without anesthetic. Like, they're doing surgeries without any painkillers. They're doing triage, whatever they can for whoever they can to keep people alive. And it's just not good enough. Like the IDF just put out the barest amount of propaganda to justify why they were in the right for killing 180 plus civilians in a hospital, a place that's supposed to be protected. Let's see. In the early hours of November 15th, the IDF said it was carrying out a precise and targeted operation against Hamas in a specific area of the complex, and that it had killed a number of militants outside the complex prior to entry. By late morning, medics inside the facility and Gaza Health Ministry officials said that Israeli forces were in complete control. Troops had gone room to room, questioning staff and patients and asking some to gather in the courtyard not far from the mass grave where the dead were buried without ceremony. The Post analyzed satellite imagery and photographs on social media to map damage to the hospital and locate the gravesite just inside the eastern gates of the hospital complex. As you can see, they created a map here. Site destruction. There's the maternity ward. There's the morgue. Site destruction, and there's the mass grave right there by the surgery unit. There was a very precise and targeted military operation that Israel carried out with a range of efforts to reduce any civilian casualties, the senior U.S. administration official said. When the WHO aid workers arrived on November 18th, medics and patients begged the team for safe passage. In the emergency department, several dozen premature babies were bawling, videos showed and doctors said. 2 more of them died before WHO evacuation vehicles arrived. Even worse, pregnant women can't be helped, making it abortions. Yeah. Sounds like Auschwitz by necessity. I mean, yeah, it's a crisis situation. Is this beyond war crimes? Doesn't war crime imply stuff done to combatants? Well, war crimes can be done to combatants and to civilians. War crimes is just the general term for violations of, like, the laws of war. But a war crime, like a genocidal atrocity, can be a war crime, yeah. Or is, I think, definitionally a war crime. They're going to kill everyone in Gaza. That seems to be the plan. Or at the very least, they want to thin the herd, to quote the article we covered on stream recently. Okay. Less than 24 hours after Israeli forces entered the complex, the IDF released video footage showing spokesman Jonathan Conricus walking through the radiology unit. Behind an MRI machine, he points out what he calls a grab bag containing an AK-style rifle and an ammunition magazine. Yeah, the one rifle and one magazine. Photos released by the military later that day purported to show the full haul of weapons recovered at the hospital, about 12 AK-style rifles in addition to magazines of ammunition, several grenades, and bulletproof vests. The Post was unable to independently verify to whom the weapons belonged or how they came to be inside the radiology unit. Yeah, it's really weird how one rifle and a single magazine suddenly became many rifles. That's crazy. Here's Washington Post verified videos released by IDF showing a tunnel network under Al Shifa, including a staircase and metal door. A tunnel! In the days that followed, a larger piece of evidence would emerge, potentially indicating militant activity beneath the facility. On November 16th, the military released visuals showing the entrance to a tunnel shaft in a northeast corner of the hospital complex near the specialty surgery building. Satellite imagery indicated that Israeli troops had found the shaft inside a small building that they demolished. Later, the military released videos of its troops and Hagari exploring the tunnel network connected to the shaft. The footage showed a long tunnel extending east from the shaft and running south beneath the special surgery unit, another section headed north away from the hospital compound. It wasn't possible from the videos to determine the north tunnel section's final distance or direction. Quote, "It's blocked and sealed. They know we're going to come here more than a month ago and sealed it," Hagari said in one video. How do you know that? How do you know that they sealed it a month ago? And if they sealed it a month ago, why are you saying it's the command center? The Post mapped the path of the tunnel by geolocating the excavation sites. Damn, that is good. Excavation sites within Al Shifa and analyzing the videos frame by frame to determine the network's directionality and length. The Post then superimposed the tunnel routes on the original map released by the IDF on October 27th that it said showcased the full extent of Hamas's command and control infrastructure. None of the 5 buildings highlighted by the IDF appear to connect to the tunnels, and no evidence has been produced showing that the tunnels could be accessed from inside the hospital wards, as Hagari claimed. So this is what the Washington Post was able to verify. These are the 5 buildings that were claimed as Hamas underground complexes and the command and control center. And weirdly enough, none of them appear to be connected to the tunnels that were shown. Oops. Just real quick.
I'm an incel myself, so.
I forgot that part of the song. Anyway. In one section beneath the surgery building, 2 small bathrooms, a sink, and 2 empty rooms are joined to the tunnel. Hagari said the rooms and tunnel drew their electricity, water, and air conditioning from Al Shifa. One room, Hagari said, was an operational room, he said, citing the electrical wiring as evidence. Yeah, this
room is an operational room that had communication with electricity.
We covered this on stream. It's insane, dude. Like, they find these tiny rooms, they're like, this is the operational command center.
Provided from the sources of the hospital, meaning the hospital is providing electricity. It's more convenient for long living, like you have toilets, more rooms. This is a room, where you can sleep, eat, make command control. It also has an air conditioning. This air conditioning goes above the hospital. One of the reasons that allows us to understand this complex is that we found the engine of the air conditioner, of course, outside, next to the Qatarian compound, inside the hospital, electricity, full electricity, the gear that was inside.
Yeah, no, guys, you see, if they have air conditioning, they have the power. They have the means. Like, this is insane, dude. Like, even if you grant, right, that this is a Hamas control center, like they're saying, it has 2 beds and a tiny bathroom, and you're trying to say that wiring coming down from the hospital is an indication that they were using this as their main command center. They have one spool of wire coming out of the wall. This is clearly the sophisticated work of the Hamas command center. What? Were you hit with a shovel as a child? Are you that silly that you just blindly believe that? Yeah, the bare white-tiled rooms show no immediate evidence of use. Yeah, can we go to like the wider room they show briefly? Like, there's nothing in there. There's nothing. They didn't even leave. When Hamas moved, they took their mattresses with them. They're so sophisticated, and yet I guess they must be sophisticated. Their cleaning technology is off the charts. Literally nothing on the ground in here.
This is a room, where you can sleep, eat, make command control. It also has an air conditioning.
Also, like, this is your command. This is the command center. You could tell from the 2 wires that are cleanly spooled up here. God. The bare white-tiled rooms showed no immediate evidence of use for command and control or otherwise. There are no signs of recent habitation, including litter, food containers, clothing, or other personal items. Quote, this room was evacuated and all the gear was evacuated. I guess it was evacuated when they knew or understood that we were going to enter the Shifa hospital, Hagari said in the video. IDF did not respond for requests for clarification. Crazy. The IDF didn't do that? Why? Wild. Hamas said in a November 18th statement that claims about its use of Al-Shifa as part of a campaign was part of a campaign of blatant lies. So, it's kind of a he said, she said situation, I guess. But the evidence we have is not very compelling for the he said element of that. Security camera footage showing armed militants leading 2 hostages through the hospital on October 7th, among some 240 captured during the assault on southern Israel. One appeared to be wounded and is on a gurney. It's not clear if the hostages were taken to the hospital for medical treatment or other purposes. Hostage taking is a crime under international law, but misuse of the hospital 5 weeks before the IDF operation does not bear on the legality of the IDF operation. Which, yeah, taking hostages to a hospital a month and a half before you raid it isn't justification for raiding it. Hospitals as targets. This is, by the way, this section is insane to me. The fact that the Washington Post is writing this and distributing this is insane. I'm really glad this is making it into mainstream media. As the dust settled on Al-Shifa, experts warned of the precedent it had set. Quote, I think there's a risk that what Israel might be trying to do here is pre-excuse future operations against hospitals. There should be no presumption that hospitals are generally targetable based on what Israel has put forward regarding Shifa. Unquote. And that's exactly what they're doing, by the way. They've been targeting more and more hospitals after Al-Shifa. By the time of the November 15th military operation, almost half of the major medical facilities in northern Gaza had been targeted or damaged in the fighting, according to a post-analysis of data from Insecurity Insight, a not-for-profit research group. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said Sunday that he was, quote, appalled by the effective destruction, unquote, of Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza, leading to the deaths of at least 8 patients and putting the facility out of service. Like, it's not just that they are raiding these hospitals and checking them out. They're actively attacking the hospitals with little to no pretext for doing so. After arresting the hospital's director, Ahmed Al-Khalot, Israel released an interrogation video Tuesday in which Khalot admitted to being a member of Hamas and said the hospital was under the control of the Izzadin al-Qassam brigades, the group's armed wing. In response, Gaza's health ministry said the statement was made under the force of oppression, torture, and intimidation to, quote, justify Israel's successive crimes, especially against the health system. Al-Awda Hospital, among the last functioning hospitals in the north, was besieged by Israeli troops earlier this month as doctors continued treating their patients and fuel and food ran low, medics and Doctors Without Borders said. Let us be clear, Al-Awda is a functioning hospital with medical staff and many patients in vulnerable condition, said Doctors Without Borders head of mission Renzo Frick in a statement. On Tuesday, the group said that Israeli forces had taken control of the facility. Men and boys over 16 years old, including medics, were taken outside and stripped, bound, and interrogated. There were still dozens of patients in the wards, the organization added, but supplies of anesthetics and oxygen had run out. And that's where this that's where this ends. I think basically what we can get out of this is that Israel's a Weasley little liar, dude. The IDF is lying. Constantly. It doesn't mean everything that the IDF says is a lie. But I think it does mean that healthy skepticism is more than deserved. Absolutely more than deserved. They're attacking vulnerable targets. And they're doing exactly what I said at the beginning of this conflict. They're just bombing and shooting people. And then after the fact, claiming that it was Hamas. Oh, those ambulances we blew up? Hamas. That school we blew up? That UN school? Hamas. Those hospitals? Hamas. Oh, well, I mean, we would have raided the hospital, but there were too much Hamas in there. So we just blew up the entire hospital. Because Hamas. Oh, well, we captured the hospital director, and we released a video of him admitting to it. So, you know, of course he's a member of Hamas and aligned with the armed brigades of Hamas. But, like, even if that was true, even if the hospital director was a member of Hamas and was, like, affiliated with the militant wing of Hamas, that doesn't matter when it comes to protected facilities under the rules of war, under the Geneva Conventions. Because what matters isn't the affiliation of who's running the hospital. I guarantee you, there are hospitals in nations we've been at war with, or who've been at war with each other, run by people affiliated with awful groups. That doesn't justify blowing up the hospital. Yeah, the ideology of the hospital director doesn't matter. What matters is what the hospital is being used for, and if it's being used to treat patients, that's what it's for. That maintains the protection under international law. If the hospital, now, it's a different story if they're shooting rockets out of the hospital at you. That makes it a target. But in none of these cases has that shown at all to be the case. If it was shown to be the case, the IDF will be blazing those images, blazing that video on every possible platform. And they're not. It's actually very suspicious how little they respond to requests for comment outside of their released propaganda videos. Aren't many in Israel concerned that hospitals in Gaza will treat Hamas terrorists? That doesn't matter. Like, you still can't attack a hospital. Right? Like, I can't believe I have to explain this, but, like, you can't just be like, well, you're people I don't like. Well, we're gonna bomb your hospital anyway. That's still contrary to international law and the Geneva Conventions. Hospitals are there to treat anyone who has an injury and needs medical treatment.